Gary, can I please have you come up? Good morning. My name is Rich Suter. I'm the base commander for Thresher Base. And this morning we're going to be presenting an award to Gary Hildreth. This is the Robert Link Award. Mr. Hildreth has been a longstanding member of the USS VI, both as a civilian and while he's been on active duty at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. In his capacity with the Public Affairs section, he plays a crucial and challenging role balancing the interface between our base, the Portsmouth Navy Shipyard civilian forces, and the U.S. Navy hierarchy. In particular, his interaction and expertise ensure the annual memorial to the loss of the USS Thresher, SSN 593, includes representation and participation in high-ranking officials of the United States Navy submarine force, as well as crew from the various submarine commands that are stationed in Portsmouth during various maintenance availability periods. Gary, on behalf of Thresher Base,
thank you.
Congratulations for the Robert Link Award.
Thanks. Okay. Okay. Well, that was a surprise. All right, well, since we're ready, we might as well get going. So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at this year's memorial service honoring the men who proudly served on USS Thresher, SSN 593. I'm former Thresher Base Commander and retired Command Master Chief Gary Hildreth, and as in years past, I am honored to once again be your Master of Ceremonies today. We, who proudly wear the gold and silver dolphins of the submarine service, can think of no better way to honor and remember Thresher sailors and the civilian technicians and mechanics who rode her that day than to once again gather at this time in their memory. For those who are able to, please rise for the parading of the colors, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the playing of our national anthem. Color Guard, parade the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Deb Henderson and Ms. Lori Arsenault will now sing our national anthem.
Rise and bright.
Where are the colors?
Right. Big. Forward. March.
Lieutenant Nathaniel Gentleholm, Navy Chaplain, will now deliver the invocation.
Welcome you to join me as I pray. Lord, we thank you so much for this solemn occasion you brought us together for. And Lord, we do thank you for a beautiful day. For each day is a day that you have created. A little soggy and rainy, chilly out there today, but inside it's warm and our hearts are filled with the warmth of this time when we can remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country. Lord, it's today that we honor and remember the 129 men who perished in the loss of the USS Thresher. And Lord, these sailors and civilians no doubt worked and fought bravely to save their boat. But Lord, as we take time to remember and honor their sacrifice, help us to know that all of that was not in vain. Lord, I thank you for this time that we have to honor the surviving family members and friends. I pray that you would help us to value the history and how you've enabled and equipped those who work with submarines to develop technologies that will advance the safety of the submarine community. And Lord, these safety procedures that have been developed, especially with the SubSafe program, are essential to the security and the protection of America and our allies and the safe operation of our submarines. I pray that you would bless this ceremony, those who will speak, and those memories that are shared. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please be seated. When a new chapter of United States submarine veterans was organized in 1989, those charter members, in their infinite wisdom, decided to honor the memory of their shipmates lost on USS Thresher by naming this base for Thresher. And as members of United States submarine veterans, we live by a creed that states, to perpetuate the memory of our shipmates who gave their lives in the pursuit of duties while serving their country, that their dedication, deeds, and supreme sacrifice be a constant source of motivation toward greater accomplishments. We pledge loyalty and patriotism to the United States of America and its Constitution. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome honored guests and military leaders joining us today. Captain Michael Oberdorf, 87th Commander, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Thank you, sir, for your leadership and guidance at the Navy's finest naval shipyard. Your unwavering commitment to the shipyard's workforce solidifies our purpose with this memorial service. Thank you. Captain Joseph Meyer. Captain Meyer is Commanding Officer of Submarine Maintenance, Engineering, Planning, and Procurement, and has graciously accepted our invitation to be our keynote speaker today. Thank you, sir. Representing the Thresher families this year, Mr. Michael Bracey will be offering remarks. Your participation in this memorial service makes this even more special for all of us. Thank you, sir. This year, we said farewell to one of our dearest shipmates, Torpedoman's mate, Bill Tebow. This service was very important to Bill. He was a giant of a personality and our last surviving World War II submarine veteran. Earning his Dolphins in 1945, he served the Navy in Portsmouth Naval Shipyard for 80 years. We recognize this at the shipyard this year. Rest your oars, shipmates. We have the watch. You are truly missed. Our first guest speaker this afternoon is Captain Michael Oberdorf. Captain Oberdorf reigns from Penn Run, Pennsylvania, and has served at sea on amphibious assault ship USS Boxer, the nuclear-powered fleet ballistic missile submarine USS Louisiana, nuclear-powered attack submarines USS North Carolina and USS La Jolla, and the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan as chief engineer. In February 2022, Captain Oberdorf assumed command of America's leader in attack submarine modernization, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Captain Michael Oberdorf, 87th Commander, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard.
Thresher families, former crew members, Captain Joe Meyer, distinguished community and military leaders, shipmates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm honored to stand before you today to participate in this very somber but important memorial service to honor the 129 heroes who lost their lives on USS Thresher that tragic day in April of 1963. This is the third time I've been privileged to provide the remarks as the 87th Commander of Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. And I have to tell you, I am humbled by your outpouring support towards one another and the fond remembrance of your loved ones for more than 6 decades. It's truly amazing and heartwarming to see. For those attending this memorial service for the first time, welcome, and thank you for paying tribute to the men of Thresher. It's been my pleasure as shipyard commander to work alongside the finest sailors, engineers, and skilled craftspeople in the nation. I can assure you that their hard work and dedication, that your loved ones did not die in vain. Shipyard workers have not forgotten the ultimate sacrifice these men paid for the freedoms we enjoy today. At the time, Thresher was the most technologically advanced submarine ever constructed and the pride of Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. And then, all of a sudden, Thresher was gone. Along with her crew of 112 sailors, 13 civilian shipyard workers, and 4 civilian contractors. The loss reverberated throughout the shipyard and across the globe. It was reported that when the news of Thresher's loss reached the shipyard, all machinery came to a halt, and the shipyard became eerily quiet. Shipyard workers congregated briefly on the shipyard mall to pay their respects and then drifted home in stunned silence. Their loss was a loss to the nation, to the submarine navy, but most of all, a personal loss to themselves and their families. To the generation of submariners, past and future, Thresher is a constant symbol of our essential commitment to operating in the punishing undersea environment. The margin for error is terribly small. We must guard against complacency and rigidly uphold high standards of design, operation, and training, lest we be reminded by the power of the sea and the loss of irreplaceable loved ones. Thresher is part of our culture, our heritage, that is relevant to each and every one of us at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. From the newest apprentice on the shop floor up to me, the loss of Thresher, her crew, the civilians from Sperry, Raytheon, and from the shipyard still weighs heavily in our hearts and our minds. Not a day passes that we don't work just a little harder and just a little smarter to ensure our work is of the highest quality. We hold one another to the highest standards, and our workforce is accountable for the maintenance they perform on our Navy submarines and responsible for the crew's safety at sea. It is personal at this shipyard. It is not just the price of failure is too high, it is the very ideal of failure is unacceptable. Our tradition of handing down trade experience from one generation to the next helps us ensure the quality of our product today. It is the hallmark of excellence and the admiration of the fleet, a testimony to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and to those who vowed never again. The sacrifice made by these fine sailors and dedicated civilians of Thresher resulted in changes and advancements that make undersea warfare today safer and more effective. Their gifts to us are our attention to detail, focus on safety, and humble pride in each successful submarine deployment. It is not enough to merely pay tribute to these men. These men are members of a very special family. We too are members of that family, and we have a covenant with the men of Thresher to never let such a tragedy happen again. Each of us owes our fullest measure of honor, courage, and commitment to that covenant. May God rest the souls of those on board USS Thresher, and may God bless us all. Thank you.
Representing our Thresher family this year, we are honored to have Mr. Michael Bracey, son of Steward Third Class George Bracey. Michael, I know you have a great and heartwarming story to share with us today, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium Mr. Michael Bracey.
Are you gonna darken half of the, can you guys hear me okay? Everybody can hear me? Okay. Guys ready? Okay, first of all, I want to thank the committee for this opportunity and you, the audience, for your attention. Ready? Were you guys surprised at the snow today? I know I was. I'm from Chicago, so you know. So in Chicago, we have two seasons, winter and construction. So, and I guess here you have basically the same, right? Oops. We're good to go. Okay. I'm going to reverse that. Okay. Something's not happening. Is it plugged in? It's turned on. Let me turn it off and I'll turn it back on. Nope.
Oh, do you have control?
Yeah, but it's turned on. Turn it right here, turn it off. Okay. Okay, so anyway, how about those Celtics? Or the Red Sox? Or the Knicks? Or the Bruins? Okay. Okay, is it working now? We're going to start all over. Hi, everybody. Okay, yeah, I know. Okay. All right. My mother was giving me a bath upstairs when we heard a knock at the front door. Either my brother Charles or Patricia, my sister, answered and hollered, saying there were some men in uniforms that wanted to speak to our mother. She responded telling my siblings to come up and finish my bath. I was only age 4, and I was probably splashing water everywhere. And at that time, I couldn't swim. After what seemed to be a minute or two, the next thing my 4-year-old mind remembered was hearing the sounds of our mother crying. Our father, George Bracy, was born December 18, 1919 in Jackson, Mississippi, to Milton and Leela Bracy. Although their marriage didn't last long, he would be her only child. She raised him. On July 24, 1937, at age 17, George married Letha Reed, age 19. This is my mother and father. She was a single mother to a 1-year-old son named Norris. 1 year later, their first of 7 children, Georgia Lee, would be born July 28th, just 4 days after their first anniversary. To follow would be Mary Alice in 1940 and Carol in 1941. As a new father with barely a high school education and a black boy in Jim Crow South, Mississippi, how was he going to support his growing family? Well, October 1942, 2 months after turning age 22, he enlisted in the then segregated United States Navy. He was sent to Norfolk, Virginia for basic training. And guess what? Just 2 months after he left for basic training, another child would be born in December 1942. Robert would be his number 5. Our father's introduction to submarine school would be in New London, Connecticut in 1943, just 2 years before World War II would end. Between this 2-year period, he would spend time on ships like the aircraft carrier USS Ranger and the USS Pargo, his first submarine. During his enlistment, he received many awards for his superior performance, knowledge, and acceptance in the then segregated military. Their 6th child and 4th daughter, Joanne, would be born November 12, 1944, but unfortunately she would pass away just on 4 months after her birth, March 12, 1945. Within a few months following Joanne's death, my parents decided to leave Jim Crow South and join the thousands of Negroes headed north to the Promised Land, only to be introduced to James Crow, and that's with an E on the end, in the north. They chose Chicago, where other relatives had fled to earlier. When they arrived in Chicago, my parents and their 5 children stayed in many one-room places, basically rented by some relatives who were already renting. Here's my family wearing their Sunday best clothes. Eventually, my father got a job working in a steel mill, but that money was not enough because Brother Charles was born in 1948 and Sister Patricia 2 years later in 1950. Whenever my father looked at my mother, she got pregnant. So he had 7 children to care for as well as a wife. So what did he do? He rejoined the Navy. This time he was sent to San Diego, California, and this was in the year 1955. Here's a photo of my parents with some friends in Tijuana, Mexico, hanging out. After a short stint in San Diego, Uncle Sam sent the family to Hutchinson, Kansas, where there was a naval air base that was built during World War II. Yes, a naval base in Kansas, in the middle of the U.S., far away from any ocean. The stay in Hutchinson was only about 2.5 years, but long enough for my sister, Mary Alice, to meet someone and fall in love. She was too young to get married, so she had to go with the family, and they drove all the way to the next destination, which was Key West, Florida. This was the spring of 1958, and Jim Crow was still active. During their journey to Key West, my mother was pregnant with me. When I was a teenager, she would reminisce, telling me about that drive to Florida. She was several months pregnant, and you mothers know that when you're pregnant, that baby sits on your bladder and you have to go to the washroom a lot. At this particular stop at a gas station somewhere down south, the gas station worker would not let her use the restroom. He said, "You have to go to the bushes, ma'am." She responded saying, "If your wife was pregnant, would you let her pee in the bushes?" His response was, "Those are the rules, ma'am." This is my family in Key West. The oldest child, Norris, he's not in this photo. By the time he was old enough to be on his own. Here is a photo of my mother and father going out to party before he was sent out on assignment to sea. And while he was out to sea, guess who showed up? That's me. Like I told you, whenever he looked at her, she got pregnant. And he would go out to sea and come back, it'd be another mouth to feed. And when he came back, this was the look on his face when he saw me. Oh no, another mouth to feed. We left Florida before I was a year old, moving to Charleston, South Carolina, and Charleston is where I learned to walk. Not just do the Charleston dance, but I also walk there. Then from Charleston to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, then to Kittery, Maine, then to Groton, Connecticut. This is me on a car. I remember standing up in the passenger side in the front of our car while Daddy was driving. This was way before seatbelt laws. Anyway, we were eating nuts. It was just he and I, we were just eating nuts. And the nuts were kind of warm, so they're probably peanuts, I don't know. But I just remember he and I were alone in the car, and I was standing up, and we were eating nuts. This is another photograph of me. Look at those knees. Now, this particular memory, I remember, I don't know, he was like working on a roof doing something. And I don't know what he was doing up there, but I just remember coming into the house, laughing, and my mom said, "What are you laughing at?" I'm like, "Daddy fell off the roof." So anyway, shortly after that roof incident, the Thresher was about to go out on a cruise. And here is the letter that he wrote to our mother, the 28th of March, 1963. Okay, this was the last letter. Now, at the bottom, little did we know this would be the last letter, of course, but this is what he said. "Tell my kids to be sweet and kiss them for me. Love, Daddy." 2 days after the Thresher accident, my grandmother received news via a telegram from Vice Admiral Smedberg. This was, back in those days, they had telegrams, and this is what he sent to my grandmother. Okay. The city of Jackson, Mississippi, his birthplace, honored him with a photo and a statement in the newspaper, rather. After the Thresher tragedy, my mother had some decisions to make. Of her 8 children, 5 were away and on their own, but 3 were still at home. She had a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and me. I was 4. What was she gonna do? Stay in Connecticut, where she didn't know too many people? Move back to the busy urban life of Chicago? Or move back to Jim Crow, Mississippi? Well, she chose somewhere in between, that little small town in Kansas, where they had been stationed at that naval air base, where my sister Mary Alice had settled with a husband and a growing family. When they were stationed there, my mother really appreciated and felt comfortable with the church community. They were very supportive. Also in Hutchinson, there was a Mason group my father belonged to, and he was a very active member. For those of you who don't know about the Masons, they're the world's oldest fraternity. They are a brotherhood of men who work together to improve themselves and the world around them morally, intellectually, and spiritually. This is my father wearing his Mason hat. Okay, this is a photo of the Masons in Hutchinson, Kansas. Now, this was way before I was born. This was their first tour as they were passing from San Diego to Florida, so I wasn't born then. But I do remember after my mother decided to go back to Hutchinson after he passed away, I remember every Christmas Eve the Masons would come to our house and they would sing songs and give us a basket of fruit as a gift. The three Masonic men in this group that I really remember and were instrumental in my life, they were our neighbors. It was Chester Roberts, Lewis Banks, and Mr. Joe Sproul. Joe Sproul was a photographer that documented the African-American community in Hutchinson, Kansas. And he also gave me tips about photography. And he eventually introduced me to Gordon Parks. Now, Gordon Parks, if you don't know who he was the first African-American photographer to shoot for Life magazine, okay? There were some other people in Hutchinson community that knew my father, and they said he had a deep voice and a very friendly demeanor. He was a kind person. Now, I currently live in Chicago, and I am a photographer. I exhibit my work at various venues like galleries, museums, schools, and libraries. About 10 years ago, I had this exhibition at the Carter G. Woodson Library on the South Side. Now, at this particular event, my sisters who live out of town, they came, okay, and they participated. They helped me with the show. Anyway, I introduced them to this guy. His name was Michael Flug, who had helped me with previous exhibitions. Now, as we all were talking, the conversation progressed, and he and I began to learn things about each other. Now, we didn't know. After we had worked all these years together, but the group started talking, and we just started learning things. Well, he's from Brooklyn, New York, and he went to Columbia University. And he said one of his college professors was supposed to be on the Thresher that day that it went down. Okay, he couldn't remember why the professor did not go on that voyage, but he just knew that the professor told him that he was supposed to go, but something happened and he didn't go. When I heard that, that just blew me away, knowing that Michael and I had worked together all these years and we had this historical connection. It just totally blew me away. I had another similar incident in my office when I worked for the state of Illinois as a retirement counselor. This school teacher and her husband came into my office for retirement advice. Within our conversation, her husband had mentioned that he used to be in the Navy as a submariner. I replied saying that my father was on the Thresher that went down in 1963. I had to take my glasses off to see. I can't see with them on, so. The man began to talk about the procedures and protocol that went through to prepare to be a submariner. Within submarine basic class, they had to listen to the last communication with the Thresher before it perished. Then he said those three words, "Those poor souls." When he said those poor souls, I immediately became emotional. The thought of hearing their screams and their cries was just too much for me. The tears began to swell up, and I immediately excused myself out of my own office. I left the couple in my office speechless. I stumbled into the hallway to gather my feelings. My vision was blurred with my tears. Those poor souls. The younger 5 were only 19. Of the 129 men, it was over, those poor souls. My father was the oldest uniformed sailor at 43. I never got to know him. That's all. Thank you.
That's okay, sir. Thank you. I know your father and all of those who were lost that day are still looking down at their families and are so very proud of how heroically you all carried on. Thank you very much. This year, we are very honored that Captain Joseph Meyer accepted our invitation to be our keynote speaker. Captain Meyer enlisted in the Naval Submarine Service as a nuclear machinist mate in 1989. Following tours on the Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine USS Mariano Vallejo and Nuclear Propulsion Training Unit Charleston, he completed the Nuclear Enlisted Commissioning Program, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Auburn University in 2001. After junior officer tours on the fast attack submarine USS Philadelphia and as Naval Submarine School Operations Officer, he laterally transferred to the engineering duty officer community and obtained a master's degree in mechanical and naval engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. As an EDO, he completed repair officer tours as supervisor of shipbuilding, Groton, Connecticut, Trident Refit Facility, Kings Bay, Georgia, and Portsmouth Naval Shipyard as the assistant operations officer, following a 15 months as deputy project superintendent on Virginia-class attack submarine USS Texas. In September of 2022, Captain Meyer assumed command of the Submarine Maintenance, Engineering, Planning, and Procurement activity, better known as SubMAP. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Commanding Officer, Submarine Maintenance, Engineering, Planning, and Procurement, Captain Joseph Meyer.
Thank you, Gary. Distinguished guests, Thresher families, shipmates, and submariners, it's a great privilege to have the opportunity to talk to you today. I want to offer a real special thanks to Mr. Kevin Galeas for the invitation and the Thresher Base group as a whole. And also a special thanks to Gary. I came on this and I didn't want to repeat what's probably been repeated many times before, so I watched all the old videos, and Gary's, I think he's the MC for every single one of them that I saw, so he's been doing this a really long time, so thank you for that, Gary. Finally, I'd like to quickly give a shout out to the Sea Cadets that are here today, supporting the event and doing the escorting. It's really refreshing to see an early interest in what we do. And maybe, someone will get something out of today's program from that group. So looking forward to seeing how those careers go for those folks. So as the commanding officer of SubMAP, my job is to ensure that the Navy's submarines remain safe and reliable for at least their design service life, and that we provide a cost-effective life cycle maintenance plan. So we're making sure that we get the right maintenance done at the right time so that the ship's reliable and ready to go when needed. One of the keys to success in that endeavor is making sure that you have a good culture, very strong culture, a good sub-safe culture. And, you know, how do you maintain something like that? This is a great way to do it, but if you're lucky, you walk into a command that already has a great culture, where there was a previous skipper that kept a great culture, and then all you have to do is maintain it. I was very fortunate that I assumed command of Submeppen, was bestowed with a great deal of culture in the workforce there. I'm very proud of all of our engineers, outstanding chief engineer and an executive director, setting outstanding examples. But the other thing that helps a lot is if you've got a good deal of firsthand knowledge of how things can go wrong. You know, as we just heard, it's when someone has personal experience and can relay a story to you that things really start to hit home and sink in. And if you've never had anything, you know, what's the word I want to use, dicey happen while you're out to sea, I feel like you're missing that. You know, in 36 years in the service, I've had the opportunity to have been involved in some pretty hairy situations. I'll name a couple here. When I was on Vallejo, I had to combat a pretty significant seawater leak at test depth from our evaporator system. And that was Patrol 52 back in, I guess it was 1992, when I was on Blue Crew of Vallejo. For those that might remember, in 1994, USS Sandlance sank at the pier at Pier Mike in Charleston, South Carolina. I was sitting at a picnic table eating lunch at the head of the pier when that happened, and I remember munching away on what she brought, and then she kind of looked around me and said, "Honey, what's that submarine doing?" And I turned around and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was the most scariest thing I had seen to date at that time. But boy, that was an eye-opener and a lesson learner. And then I guess the worst one happened in September 5th of 2005. I was on board USS Philadelphia, SSN 690. We were in the Persian Gulf, and we got run over by a container ship, or it was the motor vessel Yasso Asen. We were headed on our way into Bahrain, and the thing ran right over top of us. I remember it was at least an hour. We were at a 45-degree list and probably a 45-degree trim, and tried to get out from underneath her and ended up having to vent main ballast tanks back aft to get out from underneath that thing. And I was the one back there all the way in shaft doing that. And that was a very sobering experience. So again, it's very easy to relay personal experience to those that I work with some of that, some of those perilous situations. But those that don't have a luxury, in my opinion, the next best thing you can do is come to an event like this, where you've got people telling the stories, you know, and how they felt and how it impacted their lives. I think that makes a huge difference. We're running into a little bit of trouble, though. Now, this is the 62nd anniversary, and we don't have nearly as many folks that have the memories or have the firsthand knowledge as we used to have, and that number is only going to go down as we go. So, you know, at some point, we might have to rethink how do we keep the memory going when you don't have the firsthand knowledge. But we still got some time to figure that out. But you know, as people relocate and families, you know, go off and do what they got to do, it just gets harder and harder to get everybody together. So we're very fortunate here in Portsmouth that this is where it happened, and we've got this annual thing, and it's a great program. So to also mitigate the fact that there's not as many people that have the memories, you know, what else are we doing to mitigate that issue? You know, I thought I'd cover a few things that we have done. since we lost Thresher with the subsafe program. So one of the first things we did is we developed that program and we eliminated all of the non-subsafe ships. You always hear that we haven't lost a subsafe certified ship since Thresher. That was in 1963. Usually when we have the refresher training or the new employee training, someone always says, well, what about the Scorpion? Scorpion was lost in 1968. And what people don't realize was Scorpion was not a subsafe certified boat. There were a whole bunch of boats out there that were not able to meet the subsafe requirements well past 1963. And Scorpion was one of them in 68. At the time, they did the due diligence and they created the subsafe program, but it was implemented across the various codes and program offices within NAVC, and it wasn't done very. It was done independently. So, in 1985, there was a review done of the program. And it was discovered that there was a huge variance in how the various codes and program offices were implementing subsafe, and the effectiveness of that program was found to be highly variable. Things were not being interpreted the same by different entities. Revision A to that manual came out that realigned the entire program under NAVC Directorate 07Q, where it remains today. And we happen to have, I didn't know if he was going to be here or not, but we happen to have a former 07Q subsafe director with us today, Captain Jesse Nice, who will be relieving Captain Oberdorf here in the spring. So we're fortunate here in Portsmouth to have a former subsafe director with us. They also established a senior level subsafe oversight committee, which controls all the policy and planning. And then the subsafe working group was also stood up that was chartered to promote the awareness piece across all of the different codes and program offices. Anybody having anything to do with subsafe systems or components need to get the training, and so that's what they make sure happens. So was the realignment a success? I think it has. If you've ever been part of a subsafe functional or certification audit, I'll tell you, those guys mean business, and gals mean business. They don't fool around. If there's a question or a disagreement in how something reads, there's usually a very colorful discussion that follows that. And it's usually whoever's the strongest wins on that. But everybody's focus is on the safety of the ship and making sure that the submarine surface-to-dive ratio remains 1-to-1. So I'll tell you, I've learned more taking part in subsafe certification and functional audits than I have in the remaining 35 and 7/8 years of service. Those things are great. If you have an opportunity to participate in one, if you're still in the business, I highly recommend you do it. You'll learn a lot. So some other things we've done. We've improved and in some ways simplified submarine designs. When I was on Vallejo, to put it in perspective, that boat was commissioned only 2 years after the loss of Thresher. And she had a lot of the same systems and design characteristics that the Thresher had. And I remember back in the engine room, in addition to the main seawater system, there were these auxiliary seawater systems that cooled all the auxiliary equipment. And there was a forward system, there was an aft system, and there was an air conditioning system. And they could all be cross-connected together. And they cooled things like, the air conditioning plants, the lube oil systems, turbine generator sets, all these things. And there were what seemed like miles and miles of piping and joints, these silver brazed joints and things. And all that's been replaced now with freshwater cooling systems, so there's not nearly as many feet of seawater piping that's exposed to submergence pressure in the boat. So that's a huge improvement. Also a lot less maintenance too. We've also incorporated far superior emergency deballasting systems with strict air purity requirements and dew point specifications and filtration. to make sure that the air is dry and won't freeze up in the piping systems anymore, and it's also larger diameter pipes. So that's another big improvement. On the testing and certification phase, we've greatly improved the non-destructive testing methods, training, and procedures, and we make sure that every single joint gets tested. Back in the 60s, the UT non-destructive testing that they were using was a brand new technology, and we weren't sure, not everybody was sure exactly what they were looking at that time. It was really new. It's kind of like the phased array UT that's happening today, where we're just learning about it. And we were using a lot of different kind of materials, new materials, and we didn't have a lot of time to do some of the due diligence on those things because we were in a race against the Russians. And if you look back at the testimony that was given in 1963 on the subject of the HY-80 steel, Admiral Rickover questioned whether it was even suitable for use as a hull material for deep diving submarines on account of its tendency to crack. He argued that we really didn't understand the full properties of the material, even though we were using it on all the ships because it was the best that we had at the time. He also complained about how there were a completely inadequate number of personnel qualified to review radiography film and also to do non-destructive testing. We know that on Thresher, there were about 3,000 silver braze joints on Thresher, about 400 of which had been tested. And of those 400, about 14% were found to be substandard, and none of them were fixed before the ship went to sea. If you were to extrapolate that 14% to the 3,000, that's about 400 joints that were probably substandard on that boat. Luckily, we're at the point today where everything gets tested, and anything that doesn't meet the standards has to be resolved prior to the ship certifying, so that's a great improvement as well. On to the training. When I reported to Vallejo, that was early 90s, we didn't have any computers or computer-based training on the boats. And you know what? We were able to go and get to sea and everything just fine, so I don't know why we had to bring those things on board. But there was basically subsafe and Thresher training was an annual requirement, and it was given in person by someone on the ship. And it was only as good as however that person was at giving the training, and that could vary a great deal. You might not get it for almost a full year before getting on board to hear that story. Before I had joined up, about a year before I joined up, the USS Bonefish had a huge battery well fire on board, and the Navy was just getting through all of the investigations and all the corrective actions and everything from that. And that's all we talked about when I was on the boats was this fire prevention. We did all this stuff with nifties and put fluorescent paint on all this stuff. But the focus was not at that time on threshers and flooding. But nowadays we have the computer-based training. So if you've got a quality product there, it's consistent. Everybody can get it as soon as they get on board. And you can reach a whole bunch more people. So that's another huge improvement that we've made. So that's a good one. Looking back at what was going on in 1963, I did a lot of homework for this, sorry. There were a lot of distractions that took attention away from ensuring that Thresher was safe for unrestricted operations. The Cold War was going full swing. The Cuban Missile Crisis had recently occurred. And the shipyards were putting their best teams on the new construction ballistic missile boats, and the attack submarines were not getting the same amount of attention because the boomers were the priority. We needed to get those out there to keep the Russians at bay. Here at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, there were 2 new construction boomer boats here that Thresher had to compete with for attention. Thresher was in her post-shakedown availability, and I think they only got about a third of the work done that they had intended to do before they got her underway because they needed her. And the Navy said, hey, we need the ships and we need them right now. So interestingly, today we find ourselves in a very similar situation, just with different players. So So I think at the time, Thresher was she was the quietest, the deepest diving, and the most technologically advanced ship that we had. And I could not imagine what it would have been like to be the spouse or child or the friend of someone that was lost on that boat that day. I can't imagine what was going through the mind of the shipyard commander on that day, or the design superintendent who designed that ship. Today that would just be completely unthinkable. If we were to lose one of our new boats, I just couldn't. I couldn't imagine how that would be. And having neighbors and friends that had lost folks. Unreal. Keep an eye on the time. I'll close with this thought. Since the conclusion of the Cold War, we've had the luxury of no near-peer competitors, and we kind of adopted a zero-risk mentality and standard when it comes to our submarines. But we've got China, who's starting to rise and become a near-peer adversary, and at some point, there are going to be some risks that have to be taken, and there are going to be war fighters that are going to tell us that they want their ship, and they're willing to assume some of those risks. And so the challenge for the maintainers out there is how do we meet that fleet in the middle and get them the ship they need when they need it with the reliability that they've come to expect. That's going to be a tough challenge, and I'm looking forward to help meet it. We can't forget about what happened to Thresher when we're doing that. So it's going to be a tough call. There's going to be some real engineering that's going to be required there, and looking forward to working on that. So thank you, everybody, for the time. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Captain. Always gracing our service with their beautiful voices and musical talent, it just wouldn't be the same without Lori and Deb's rendition of the Navy hymn. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please welcome Miss Lori Arsenault and Miss Deb Henderson, daughters of Chief Engineman Tillman J. Arsenault.
Strong to save, whose arm hath bound the restless wave, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee for those in peril on the sea. Oh, Christ, whose voice the waters heard, and hush their raging at thy word, who walkest on the foaming deep, and calm amid its rage did sleep. Oh, hear us when
Thank you, Lori and Deb. The tolling of the ship's bell is a solemn remembrance of our shipmates, men who sacrificed their lives aboard USS Thresher in the service of their country. John F. Kennedy once said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors and the men it remembers." I now would like to invite Thresher Base Chaplain Mr. Roger Retzky, former Thresher Base Commander Mr. John McArdle, Thresher Base Coordinator Mr. Scott McCord, son of Machinist Mate First Class Donald McCord, and our bell toller, Thresher Base Commander Mr. Rich Suter, to perform this ceremony. Out of respect to our departed shipmates, we would normally rise during the bell tolling. Instead, I would ask that you remain seated so that all may be able to better see the slide presentation. Thank you.
Fred Philip Abrams. Philip Harcourt Allen. Tobin Joseph Arsenal. Ronald Claire Babcock. Ronald Eugene Bain. Daniel W. Beal Jr. John Edward Bell. Robert Donald Biederman. John Hillary Billings. Edgar Soran Bobbitt. Gerald Charles Foster. George Bracey. Richard Paul Brand. Richard James Karkowski. Patrick Wayne Carmody. Stephen George Tiggy. Robert E. Shalom. Edward Christensen. Larry William Paulson. Thomas Edward Clements. Merle Francis Collier. Kenneth Ray Corcoran. Kenneth James Critchley. Francis Michael Cummings. Paul Chevalier Courier. Samuel Joseph DeBruzzi. Clyde Alcott Davison III. Donald Clifford Day. Roy Overton Denny Jr. Richard Roy Desjardins. Peter Joseph Vivella. George J. Lanine. Edmund Garner. Pat Mahaffey Garner. Robert William Gaynor. Robert Howard Gosnell. John Gilbert Grafton. William Edward Graham. Paul Alfred Durrett. Aaron Jackie Johnson. Richard Charles Hall.
John Wesley Harvey. Norman Theodore Page. Laird Lynn Heiser. Marvin Theodore Celsius. James John Henry, Jr. Leonard Odegoder Hewitt. Joseph Hartshorn Ode. James Porter Hodge. John Francis Hudson. John Penfield Nicholas. Maurice Frank DeQuay. Bronner Garth Johnson. Edward Albert Johnson. Richard Lee Johnson. Robert Eugene Johnson. Thomas Benjamin Johnson. Richard Williams Jones. Edmund Joseph Belusa. Thomas Charles Camp. Robert Dennis Kearney. Richard D. Pryor. George John Isager. Billy Max Clear. Robert Lee Craig. George Ronald Kerner. Donald William Huser. Norman Gilbert Lanette. Wayne Wilford Lloyd. John Sheldon Lyman. Templeman Norwood Mabry Jr. Frank John Walensky. Richard Herbert Mann Jr. Julius Francis Rullo Jr. Douglas Ray McClellan. Donald James McCord. Carl Paul Donnie. Sidney Lynn Middleton. Henry Charles Rowe. Ronald Arthur Hughes. James Allen Musselwhite. Donald Henry Knoll. Walter Jack Nunes. John Daniel Norris. Jeffrey Charles Edding. Franklin James Palmer.
James Glenn Peters. James Frank Philippi. Daniel Andrew Philip. Richard Powell. Robert Ian Prescott. John Sage Reagan. James Patrick Ritchie. Curtis Robeson. Glenn Alva Roundtree. Anthony Alexander Krzyzewski. James Michael Schray. Benjamin David Schaefer. John Davis Schaefer. Joseph Thomas Schimko. Burnett Michael Shotwell. Alan Dennison Sinet. John Smars Jr. William Harry Smith Jr. James Leonard Snyder. Ronald Al Solomon. Donald P. Stadmiller. Robert Edward Simell. Roger Edward Van Pelt. Joseph Alfred Walsky. David Allen Wassel. Lawrence Eugene Whitten. Charles Louis Williams. John Joseph Wiley. Tom Edward Wise. Ronald Eugene Wolf. J. Henry Zweifel.
To those who knew them, sailed with them, called them shipmates, they are very real, and we shall never forget them as they sail on eternal patrol. On behalf of Thresher Base, I would like to thank those who had made today's program possible: Captain Joseph Meyer, Captain Michael Oberdorf, Chaplain Genelholm. Michael, your sincere words and fond memories touched all of us. Thank you, sir, and thank you for traveling from Chicago to be with us today. Lori and Deb, as always, thank you for your continued support of this service and the Memorial Day service each year at Albacore Park. The Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Color Guard, the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department, our bugler this afternoon, Miss Karen McCarthy, our pipers, Mr. Dave McLean and Mr. Josh Hopkins, and finally, to the Dan Healy Division C cadets, thank you all. A service like this just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of hard work and determination to overcome the daily challenges one encounters when trying to organize an event of this magnitude. None have worked harder than Kevin and Robin Galliez. Without their commitment to our Thresher families and the men who sailed aboard Thresher, this service would not be possible. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Robin. And finally, I'd like to thank the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Public Affairs team as they provided the video and the photography support today, so thank you. Lieutenant Gentleholm will now deliver the benediction. For those who are able to, please rise.
Welcome you to join me again as I close our time in prayer. Lord, we thank you so much for all the meaningful words that have been shared this afternoon. We do thank you for the development of the SubSafe program. Thank you for helping this program to be effective. Thank you so much that we have not lost one SubSafe certified submarine since its inception. And Lord, I pray that you continue to impress upon each of us the importance of learning from our past, learning from history, always seeking to make ships and submarines better and most importantly, safer. I pray for all the men and women here at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard that you would help them in whatever their capacity is in contributing towards the overhaul and maintenance of these submarines, that they would not lose that vision. Lord, would you please protect our sailors as they go out in submarine service, for it truly is a dangerous environment underneath the water. I pray that you give them fortitude and strength and teamwork, and Lord, that you would protect them, that you would bless them. And I pray that you would be with the shipyard workers as many of them engage in tasks that could be dangerous. I pray that you keep them safe, help them to work together well as a team. Please bless us as we leave this place today, and I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, I'm not sure what the weather's like out right now, but at this time I would ask that we adjourn to the waterfront for the wreath ceremony. The family of Quartermaster First Class Julius Francis Marullo, Jr. will be casting the wreath this year. Thank you all for attending and have a safe weekend.